So, you see the headlines, right? Military strikes in Iran. And it's easy to just think, okay, this is about missiles, it's about regional power. But what if I told you that's just the surface? That underneath all that, there's a hidden conflict raging, a war over the future of the entire global financial system. To really get what's going on, we gotta peel back the layers.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to look at 6 distinct layers of this thing. We'll start with the obvious, the shooting war. Then we'll dig into the economics of oil, how the US dollar gets used as a weapon, a crazy insurance choke point you've probably never heard of, and finally, how cryptocurrency is making its absolutely explosive debut on the world stage.
All right, first up, let's talk about what everybody saw in the news. The immediate crisis. You know, the visible, kinetic warfare that really kicked this whole domino chain into motion.
So the conflict kicks off with just overwhelming force. Operation Epic Fury. I mean, we're talking hundreds of targets hit all across Iran. Revolutionary Guard bases, air defenses, naval assets, the works. It was a massive, undeniable show of military power, designed to just cripple Iran's ability to fight back. But Iran's response, it wasn't what you'd expect. It wasn't another volley of missiles. It was something way, way smarter. They moved to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And just like that, they shifted the entire battleground from a direct fight to an economic one. And this one move shows you exactly why this little strip of water is so unbelievably important. So now let's get into why this was such a devastatingly powerful move. See, Iran didn't just pick some random shipping lane to mess with. No, they went right for the world's energy jugular. Get this, a staggering 20% of all the oil shipped by sea on the entire planet has to pass through this one narrow channel. So shutting it down, that's not just an act of war against the US. It's basically holding a fifth of the world's entire energy supply hostage. It is, quite literally, a weapon of mass economic destruction.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Look at who gets hit the hardest. This isn't just an American problem. The blockade absolutely crushes Asian economies, especially China, which gets nearly half of its oil from the Middle East. It's a strategic move that puts incredible pressure on America's biggest economic rival.
But here is the real twist in the story. This whole conflict, it isn't just about the physical flow of oil. It's about the currency used to buy that oil. This is where we get to the absolute heart of this new kind of currency war.
For 50 years, the world has been running on something called the petrodollar system. Basically, all the major oil producers agreed to sell their oil only for US dollars. Think about that. This forces every single country that needs oil to also need dollars, creating this permanent artificial demand that props up the dollar as the world's #1 currency.
And this system? It gives the US an incredible financial weapon. Through sanctions, the US Treasury can pretty much unplug a country like Iran from the entire global economy. By denying them access to dollars, they're denying them access to the oil market. And they can threaten anyone, any company or country that even tries to help them out. And the impact on the ground has been absolutely devastating. Sanctions totally crushed Iran's economy. Their currency, the rial, just collapsed. This economic desperation led to massive protests inside the country, which, in a grim twist, was part of the justification the US used for its military strikes in the first place.
Okay, so the US controls the dollar. But there is another, much more subtle layer of financial control that almost nobody ever talks about. And that is maritime insurance.
You've probably heard of Lloyd's of London. They're basically a marketplace for insuring massive, high-risk things like oil tankers. But here's the crucial part. Without their insurance coverage, most ports in the world won't even let a ship dock. It effectively becomes illegal for them to sail. They're a private, non-governmental choke point on all of global trade.
Now look what happens when a conflict breaks out. The cost for what's called war risk insurance just goes through the roof. A premium that was, say, $120,000 can jump to over $2.4 million for a single trip. Eventually, the risk gets so high that insurers like Lloyd's just stop offering coverage completely. And just like that, trade grinds to a halt without a single shot being fired. So what does the US do? It makes a really clever countermove. A government agency, the DFC, steps in and says, "Don't worry. We'll be the insurer of last resort." By providing government-backed insurance, the US completely bypasses the private market. And now, it gets to decide which ships are safe enough to sail, effectively picking winners and losers in global trade. This is where the conflict takes a truly 21st century turn. Iran is facing military pressure, financial sanctions, and now this insurance choke point. So, They deploy a new kind of weapon. I mean, really think about it. How can Iran possibly fight back against this multi-layered system of control? They can't match the US Navy. They're locked out of the dollar system. What move do they have left to play?
Their answer is incredible. They demand that all tolls for passing through the strait and all payments for their oil be made in digital currencies like Bitcoin. This is a direct assault on the petrodollar system. By using money that isn't controlled by any state, money that is permissionless and can't be sanctioned, Iran is trying to build a brand new, parallel financial system, completely outside of US control.
And right here, we are watching the two possible futures of digital money go to war with each other. On one side, you have permissionless money like Bitcoin, which fundamentally challenges the power of the state. And on the other, you have controlled money, like government-backed digital currencies or corporate stablecoins, which would actually extend and strengthen state financial control.
So let's bring this all together. What we're seeing isn't just a regional conflict in the Middle East. It's a global chess match for the future of money itself.
This quote just captures the endgame perfectly. The military presence, all those warships in the Gulf, they're not just there to protect oil routes anymore. They're there to enforce a preferred monetary system. They are the ballot box. And the currency that nations choose to use, well, that's their vote.
And on this new global chessboard, you can see all the players making their moves. The US is doubling down, using its naval power to defend the dollar while trying to fast-track its own controlled digital currencies. China is playing it safe, using these so-called shadow fleets to quietly get around sanctions. And Iran? Iran is forcing everyone's hand, using its blockade to demand a radical shift to alternatives like Bitcoin. So, why does any of this actually matter to you, to us? Because the very foundation of the global economy is being challenged right now. This conflict could seriously speed up a move away from the US dollar. And it proves once and for all that digital currencies aren't just a theory anymore. They are real-world tools of geopolitics. The outcome of this fight is going to define what money, privacy, and economic freedom look like for the next generation.
And that leaves us with one last big question. A physical waterway, the Strait of Hormuz, is being blockaded. But in doing so, is this conflict blowing the doors wide open to a completely new global financial system? The only question is, what's that new world going to look like?